Hello, welcome to another video about top players in Faction Warfare. Today we will look at the rankings for July 2026. As usual, this is only Faction Warfare systems, only solo PvP and only frigates and destroyers. So stuff relevant for frigates. The first thing I noticed is actually a lot of familiar faces. When I started this series, I thought that I will see a lot more deviation in the rankings month by month, but as far as I can see, many characters here were in the June and May 2026 lists as well. So I wonder if I will just run out of profiles to review after a few months, but we will see. And also noticeable that the activity keeps dropping as we go in summer. I think in May we had 250 something solo kills. In June it was 150 plus, and now it's only 125. So around 100 is what I consider doable doable without no life in if. And if in below 150 you have to really put some serious hours to get it. Okay, I guess we will just very briefly look at Klae's and Tom's profiles. We already looked at them in May and June. If it's mostly the same feats, well, we'll just not spend too much time there. And I want to look at Movmax as well, because this is a name I'm not familiar with, so I want to see the feats and ships. So let's start with Klae. Okay, here is the top killer for July. If I remember correctly, this is a Momake resident. Yes, a Momake. And Vigil Fleet issues. Breachers, Condors, Rifters. I think this is familiar. Let's look at the losses. Yeah, I think I remember this. So typically you fly Navy Vigils as webkiters. So you use point instead of scrum, and then javelins instead of rage. Double webs and afterburner, this is normal. He uses it as a scrum kiter, so rage plus double webs, which is also quite feasible. The only issue with that is that you're not really utilizing the web range of Navy Vigil, but it's still quite competitive, even as a scrum kiter. Thrasher fleets, well, I guess let's look at Thrasher fleets as well. 280 million, yeah, I think this is standard. Yeah, I think something like this is in the yearbook, and tracking computer, you can swap between tracking computer and tracking disruptor if you want. I think tracking disruptor is better against destroyers, especially like against long range destroyer versus long range destroyer matchups. There you would like a tracking disruptor. But against like several frigates, tracking computer is fine. Okay, this is pretty normal. Condor. Shield rocket Condor with point. And range extending rigs. This is a bit unusual. So as far as I remember, Condor does not have a bonus to range like Kestrel, so you cannot really webkite in it, and this is kind of a webkiting feat. So I think this is kind of an attempt to make Condor that can both scrum kite and webkite. I guess if you switch to faction or javelins when with range extending rigs, it may work. But it's a bit weird, because ideally you want to I know. I guess it's. I guess it makes sense because you can't really webkite with rage, anyways. Yeah, the issue here is that if you fight against a frigate, when you cannot use rage because you have only one web. Yeah, it's a bit odd. I guess it can work, but it's a bit odd. Okay. This is polarized. Yeah, it's polarized rifter. This thing exists. It's not that great unless you are trying to hard counter something. But for general purposes, it's not that great, and it's also very expensive because polarized stuff is relatively expensive for Tech 1 frigates, I feel like. Well, it's not too bad. It's like 5.5 million, so you double the price approximately of your typical Rifter. But yeah, this stuff generally doesn't work. It's very situational. I guess this is something similar. Oh no, this is Kiting Rifter with an afterburner. Huh, this is some weird stuff as well. So this should work only against ships with an afterburner. Because if you fight macro warp drive, even destroy a macro warp drive, you cannot run away. So this is kind of, I'm sitting in a plex, and nobody expects a Kiting Rifter, so people will warp in an afterburning frigate, or like a close range destroyer with 1 MN or 10 MN afterburner. And when I will try to do something by kiting. And since we both afterburners, our control is equal. This is some kind of a very big brain stuff. Again, very situational. This is actually very nice demonstration on why I don't like fighting in Amamake. Because people will just undock with really weird stuff that is strictly designed to counter something else. And you're like, well, we are just playing rock, paper, scissors now. This is also a bit weird. Yeah, well, I talked a lot about double rep frigates without a web already, so I'm not gonna repeat myself. Let's look at the slasher. This looks standard. Yeah, this looks standard. Well, I wouldn't fit Tech 2 rigs on a slasher. It seems kind of excessive what you pay 40 million for a slasher, but I guess. The problem with this fit is it kind of works very well on paper, but in practice the problem is that you extend your signature radius by a lot with medium shield extender and with rigs, and small signature radius is one of the selling points on a slasher. But yeah, other than that, it makes sense. You kind of try to make your newt your win condition. I think Firetail with a very similar fit works much better because it relies a bit more on just raw tank, and it also has very good control. The slasher is, when I tested this, I found that I just run out of hit points before I can kill my opponent. Unless my opponent is very cap dependent, in this case it works. Okay, one last. Well, let's look at the hook bill and the slicer. So this looks standard. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think this is pretty. I'm not sure about this thing. Ah, it's because micro warp drive. I was very confused because the typical medium shield extender hook bill, you do not need a fitting module. You can use like overdrive or something. But this is because this is a micro warp drive. Against this was a fight against some kind of a kiter. So this was an anti-kiting fit. And when the friends arrived and cooked him. Yeah. Yeah, another demonstration on why I don't like to fight an Amamaki. You bring a kiter and then the guy undock something like anti-kiting. Slicer, this is Tanaman. Yeah, this is Tanaman. I think we looked at this last time. So it kind of sort of works, but it's very weird to fly. Because you have a hard time controlling your opponent, since you cannot turn anywhere. Yeah, and I think it should go with beams, because with pulses you don't have enough radius to work with Tenaman. Okay, yeah, makes sense. Let's look at the next profile. Okay, our number 2 is Tom. Tom was number 1 in the June list. I think we spent a fair bit of time looking at the profile. So let's just briefly check the recent feeds and see if there is anything new. This is standard. Yeah, we talked about the Caprik in the last video. Yeah, so with a beam slicer, you just have a lot of issues with cap. So you have a kind of a choice between fitting for a little bit more optimal or for a little bit more cap. But overall, it's pretty standard. So Navi Crucifier, like as Tom explained in the comments to a previous video, so the idea here is that you use optimal range and then use conflux. And apparently most of our opponents cannot even hit up to the conflag range. So this was the idea of his feat. And I suppose against cruisers you just feed double tracking disruptor scripts and they cannot track you. It is probably a bit of an overkill, as I said in the last video. I don't think if you fight against cruisers you need double tracking disruptor. You will mitigate even with a single one. Firetail. This is standard. This is standard web kiting artillery firetail. Yes, normal. Yep. So I think something like this, maybe even exactly this, is in the yearbook. Rifter. This is 400. Yes, this is 400. This is also standard. Yeah, so this is kind of a brawling rifter. You're just trying to stat check ships that fight inside scrum range. And the plate still gives you enough control thanks to great base speed on a min-matter hull. I think this is also something like this is in the yearbook, pretty sure. Executioner. Yeah, I think we looked at something like this in the previous video as well. So again, as Tom explained, this is actually, it has pretty good cap. My concern was that the cap maybe is a bit of an issue with a tracking disruptor in the medium slot, but it works fine. But another than that, of course it makes perfect sense. Since you will be able to mitigate any long range DPS and you will have pretty decent control since it's an attack frigate. Yeah, so your only counter, the hard counter, is drones, I guess. Because if your opponent has drones, this ship will have some issues. Slicer, Firetail, let's look at Excurser. So this looks pretty normal as well. Usually this idea is executed with beams, and this is, well, sometimes people use double webs, sometimes like afterburner and the web. Yeah, the idea is that you just try to kill frigates and destroyers before we warp out. And because you get a tracking bonus and you have a ton of damage and you have pretty decent control, your application is good, and when it's stat check, and well, it's quite difficult to win against a coercer just point blank. So very often you can at least force a draw. The reason why I think the Bucks coercer was with beams is because you get some protection against tracking disruptors. With this, if any kiter with tracking disruptor comes in, you're just dead because you will not be able to apply. Firetails. This is kind of sort of similar. I guess this is some kind of variation, very specific variation against some specific opponent, because otherwise I don't really see why not double webs. Yeah, I think scrum range arty firetails are not that great, because when you put yourself in the optimal of rockets and rails, and it's not that competitive on tank and DPS in this case, so you need more range. I guess Tracking Disruptor helps a bit in these cases. Yeah, it's an interesting concept. Not sure about it, but maybe there is something to it. Retribution is interesting. Okay, this is standard. This is standard beam retribution. Yes, everything is standard. Let's look at one more maybe. Fresh fleet. Yeah, and this is also standard. So we just saw something like this when we looked at Klae's profile. I think this is also in the yearbook. Yeah, and as I said, you can swap tracking computer with tracking disruptor when appropriate. Yep. Okay, let's look at the next profile. Okay, number 3 is Movmax. This is something new, and the character is really fresh. And I suppose this is another Hadoziko. I used to live in Hadoziko like ages ago. Was it like 2016 maybe? I think this is a border system to a high sec, or very close to a border. Well, anyways, it's not really the purpose of this video. What does he fly? Let's look at stats. Frigates primarily, and all time. Tristans, Comets. Ishkur, a little bit of Ishkurs. Interesting. I'm very curious about his Tristan fits. I feel like Tristan, after all of direct and indirect nerfs, is really not popular anymore. Oh, Algos Navy issues as well. Whole bunch of Algos Navy issues. Okay, well, let's start with Algos Navy issues, I suppose. Tanaman? Yes, Tanaman. Yeah, so when I kind of briefly reviewed the stats for these new ships, for Algos, it felt like it's essentially Tech 1 Algos with buffed up stats. So fitting another Algos is very straightforward. You just take fits from Tech 1 Algos and slap them on with Navy Algos, and they work exactly the same. It's just a better ship because you get more tank and more DPS. But it's as simple as this. And this is, yes, this is essentially a tick 1 10-man webkiting algas with one extra low slot. Everything else is the same. This is 75, yeah, this is exactly the same. This one, this is the Dixie. Okay, this is the same. This one, this is the same, okay. Yeah, this will be one of the feats that will be recommended in the next edition of the yearbook for Navy Algas. Just use Tenement basically. Kiting Tristans. Oh, this is a blast from the past. This used to be probably the main feat and ship around 2015, 2014, 2015. Like immediately after the CCP nerfed light missiles, and when all the Condors and Navy Hookbills, light missile Condors and light missile Navy Hookbills disappeared, everyone started using this. It was like all the time. You go for a roam around faction warfare and you kill like 5 Kiting Navy Tristans. Yeah, and when speed got nerfed and they were kind of not as fast and agile anymore, and when surgical strike came, so it became much easier to kill the drones, so they got even worse. So, and then now people are not really using them anymore. Let's look at Kikimara, just out of curiosity. Tenement. Yeah, it works. It's not as common as Micro Warp Drive Medium Shield Extender Warp Disruptor one, but it works as well. Yeah, it's a bit tricky to fly, to be honest, because 10 plus disintegrator weapons, once you are out of optimal, you lose all the spool, and then it kind of gets a bit messy. So yeah, 10 on Kikimara is quite hard to fly. You really have to be precise and grid to extract good value out of it. With Micro Warp Drive, I feel it's a bit easier. Okay, it's the same. Anything else? I want to, oh yeah, I want to look at the Ishkur. Why double rep? Yeah. Well, it's kind of with feat that's in the yearbook, but I don't feel like you need double rep. Like if you are face tanking in a kiting ship, something has gone terribly wrong. So I don't think you need double reps here. I think you only need one, and the other should be used for speed, because Ishkur is still pretty slow, like a baseline for a kiter. You need some speed and agility modules. And the Comet, this is standard. Yeah, usually people feed double max tabs, but overdrive is perfectly fine as well for control. You trade a bit of DPS for a bit of control, so it's fine. Okay, let's look at one more. Okay, number 4 is Delanhunt. This is a famous dude in Galanti Caldari Warzone. I think I fought against him a few times. So what he is up to these days? Courser Navy, Punisher, Rifter, Slicer, Hate. Yeah. Yeah, I think I fought him when he was flying a lot of Slicers. Yeah. Yeah, and it was in Hade area as well. I think he is like a Hade resident these days. Yeah, Hade Abune. These two adjusting systems. Okay, losses. Corsair Navy. A bit weird. I guess this is some kind of a situational feat for breaching a plex with a bunch of dudes. I guess in this case it kind of makes sense. Yeah, a bit weird. I can't remember exactly the typical Pulse Navy Corsair feat. I feel like you need a newt, and I feel like it's 400 plates on a standard feat. Can't remember. I remember that you definitely need a newt, because without tracking bonus, it's very easy to mitigate for frigates. Just orbit 500 and then you're kinda screwed. So you need a newt to protect yourself against this. Yeah, Brawling Slicer. This briefly was a thing a while ago, and when people kind of got better at recognizing that we're not actually pointed, and when kind of died off. This was during the time when a lot of people fitted comets with double webs as well, without scrum. It kind of works, but again, you really rely on people not warping out. 10 a man? No, 1 a man. This is some kind of a weird stuff. 1 a man, 125 mm rails. Yeah, I'm not convinced about this thing. Because you still have to be quite close to apply decent damage. But when anyone will just see with your rail feet, and then they will just click orbit 500 and it's GG. And you don't have overwhelming DPS here anyways. Yeah, I'm not that sure about this thing. Kiting. Yeah, this looks standard. Yeah, so this is like a long range variation of Navy Corsair. Yeah, this is actually a very good feat if you see it in the complex. Slicers. Okay, again, close range slicers. Rifters. This is also pretty standard. So there is a feat with 400mm and a feat with 200mm. This is more of a scrum kiter, and 400mm is more of a brawler, but both are pretty feasible. Tormentor. This looks standard to me. 400. Yeah, this is more like a brawling tormentor. Typically you fit like a 200 and a heatsink, and then you scrum kite. But I guess scrum kiters with Scorch are not really that competitive, so I guess it makes sense to try to fly this. Fresh fleet. This looks standard to me. Yeah. This is not very exciting feat either, to be honest. It's like Tick 1 Thrasher, if you fit it like this. It's just, it kind of looks okay in PIFA, but when you actually start flying it, it's very uninspiring. yeah, your DPS for destroyer brawls is not great, the tank and DPS overall, and your control is still not enough to do anything against properly fitted frigates. So it's an okay fit, but I'm not really convinced. Maybe Malus, this can be interesting. Okay, so this is sort of a webkiting feat, I guess, because with a bonus to scrum range, you will actually webkite and not scrum kite. And when you kind of attempt to say that your DPS at webkiting range is competitive. I should test Navy Malus a bit more. After all the buffs, I was a bit critical of these buffs. Like I felt that they're not that great still. But I see quite a few active players use them, so maybe there is something to it. What is this? Okay, this must be some weird stuff. Stargate. I don't know. Gate camping, insta-lock in Hookbill. Let's look at like one or two more. Yeah, so this makes sense. I think something like this is in the yearbook as well. So this is webkiting artillery slasher. Its tank is practically non-existent, but you have a very tiny SIG, you have a good control, and you have a tracking disruptor. So it's actually quite difficult to apply, especially if you have position advantage in the beginning. There is another alternative where you just go with micro warp drive and full kiting fit. But this one works as well. And yeah, as you just saw, drones. This ship hates drones because you cannot mitigate against drones, and if you cannot mitigate, you cannot win because your tank is non-existent. But against most other stuff, it's quite interesting. Korax. Well, Tick-1 Korax is very uninspiring ship. When Navy Korax is quite interesting, but Tick-1 Korax is kind of crap. No matter how you fit it, it just does not have enough tank and DPS to brawl against destroyers, and it does not have enough control to do much against frigates. Because you only have 4 medium slots and you need 1 slot for tank, so it means you only have 1 web, and with only 1 web you don't have enough control against frigates. So all the frigates are kind of automatically out of your potential engagement profile. And you don't have enough DPS to overwhelm them either. Frigates generally will have time to kind of burn away and bail if we want to. Anything else interesting? Navy Catalyst. Tenaman. Yeah, this is fairly standard, I guess. Tracking Disruptor was an attempt to counter something, because typically you fly Tenaman Navy Catalyst with a web. It's a web kiting fit. Guess in this specific situation there was something that made fitting Tracking Disruptor feasible. Okay, I think this is enough for this ranking for July. Thanks for watching, and the next one will be like early September for August ranking list. So see you there.